A fragile ceasefire on the brink of collapsing, the promise to disarm a militia that could potentially backfire, and a foreign partner running out of patience. Lebanon is staring down the barrel of a pivotal period. I'm Melinda Nusafora, and coming up on Counterpoints, we'll debate the future of Hezbollah and whether Lebanon can stand up to Israel without them. A little over 1 year on, and this is what the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire looks like. In its latest strike on southern Beirut, Israel killed another senior Hezbollah leader, one of the few to have survived the brutal conflict post-October 7. Even though the ceasefire technically remains in place, Israel has warned more intense fighting could follow.
I expect the Lebanese government to fulfill its commitment to disarm Hezbollah, because only in this way will every citizen of Lebanon have a better future, and only in this way will there be a good and secure neighbourly relationship between Israel and Lebanon.
In other words, force Hezbollah to give up its weapons or expect the war to resume. The Lebanese government pledged back in September to disarm Hezbollah, but the US isn't happy with its progress.
Lebanon is a failed state. There's no central bank. The banking system is bust. So what's the state? The state is Hezbollah. You go south, Hezbollah gives you water, gives you an education, gives you a stipend, has 40,000 soldiers. LAF, Lebanese Armed Forces, has 60,000 soldiers. The only problem is the Hezbollah soldiers make $2,200 a month. The LAF soldiers make $275 a month.
And therein lies the problem. Disarming Hezbollah isn't that easy or that popular in parts of Lebanon, and the government is wary of reigniting sectarian violence. Coming up on this debate, we'll ask our panel, should Hezbollah hand over its weapons? Can the Lebanese army defend its people successfully without Hezbollah's military support? And is the US running out of patience? Joining us for this discussion is David Daoud, a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies, where he's an expert on Lebanon and Hezbollah. Omar Badar is joining us, a Middle East analyst based in Washington, D.C. And Sarit Zahavi is rounding out our panel, a former IDF Lieutenant Colonel and president of Alma, an independent research centre focusing on Israel's security challenges along its northern border. Everyone, thank you and welcome to being here on Counterpoints. Lebanon approved a one government, one military plan in late September. According to senior US military sources, as of October, the Lebanese armed forces have removed from a variety of different affiliates 10,000 rockets, 400 missiles, and more than 205,000 unexploded ordnances. But by and large, Hezbollah has refused to hand over the majority of its stockpile, arguing it would play into Israel's hands. Omar, let's start with you. Should Hezbollah hand over its weapons?
I think the question of whether Hezbollah should disarm is one that is entirely up to the Lebanese people. I know that there's a divide within Lebanon on the question, and so I would not externally feel entitled to weigh in on my personal opinion on that. That is really something up for them. But I can tell you that the regional dynamic right now, particularly with Israel's aggressive behavior, is really making the argument for disarmament more difficult. Israel is behaving like a malevolent actor throughout the region. You can see that they're committing genocide in Gaza, they're expanding settlements in the West Bank, and even in nearby Syria, where the pro-Hezbollah government of Assad has been toppled, and you have a new government coming in right now that is bending over backwards to come to decent terms with Israel. What Israel has responded with is an expansion of its occupation within Syria, carrying out regular bombings and killings and arrests, behaving in a completely rogue fashion. And what they've done so far in Lebanon since the ceasefire has been agreed to is launch thousands of strikes in Lebanon, killing at least 127 Lebanese civilians. So when you have an actor that is behaving with this kind of, complete lawlessness, it is no surprise that the argument within Lebanon of people who are saying, actually, we need to be able to defend ourselves, becoming to gain a little bit more traction and make the argument for disarming much more difficult in the face of a regional bully that behaves like Israel does.
I'm not sure if you're writing some notes there, Sarit. Is there something you want to add or to respond to what Omar said?
Tons of it. First, Israel is not committing genocide in Gaza. This statement cannot go without my response. Israel is fighting a brutal terrorist organization that is controlling Gaza since 2006 and killing its own people, using its own people as human shields. And many of the tactics of Hamas are being used by Hezbollah the same way in Lebanon. Hezbollah planned the same massacre to us. I live 9 kilometers from Lebanon here. So plan the same thing for us Israelis over here. That's one thing. Second, as for the policy, I want to explain it for a moment from the Israeli point of view, okay? We've been waiting. We've been waiting for many, many years, especially on the Israeli-Lebanese border, for somebody to do something against a growing monster named Hezbollah just across the border. I saw them in the past 2 years following me with their cameras, following any IDF movements on the Israeli side of the border, and we did nothing about the armament of Hezbollah and deployment of terrorist infrastructures inside the houses, inside the homes, beneath the mosques, beneath the churches, beneath the schools in South Lebanon. When October 7th happened, we understood that we cannot allow those capabilities to be developed next to our border, just across our communities. And that's why we are doing two things. Yes, we are taking off, eliminating those kind of capabilities of terrorist groups, whether it's Hamas, Hezbollah, whoever it is in Syria. And second, as our leadership committed to us, the people that are living next to borders, the IDF will be the buffer between enemies, as long as they exist on the other side, and the Israeli civilians, which again, reminding everybody, were massacred in October 7th by Hamas animals. That's why we have IDF positions in the Syrian side of the border, and that's why we have 5 hills. 1 minute, let me finish because I didn't interrupt you. And that's why we have 5 hills on the Lebanese side of the border. And I want to make sure that everybody understands, and if not, you're most welcome to come here and see for yourselves. These are 5 hills, no more than just hills, across a border of more than 120 kilometers. One of those hills I can see from my community, 9 kilometers from the border, meaning that this place controls basically all the western side of northern Israel. And the one we're standing on top of the hill is the one who is threatening me, since from this hill, rockets were launched towards my community during the current war.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Omar?
If I can interject very briefly.
Go.
Just when we talk about genocide, it's not a debate whether I think it's genocide or whether she thinks it's genocide. What people need to look at is every single major human rights organization in the world, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, even Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem said that Israel is committing genocide. That's a growing consensus among genocide scholars, including Israeli genocide scholars who are saying that Israel has committed genocide in Gaza. Same with Human Shields. Not only do major human rights organizations say that Israel employs human shields, but Israeli soldiers themselves admitted to using Palestinian civilians as human shields in Gaza, documented in the Israeli press, Israeli Haaretz and other outlets. And so when you're dealing with somebody whose job it is to simply whitewash the crimes of their own government, frankly, the largest terrorist organization in the entire region is the Israeli government and its genocidal army that has behaved in a way that is just completely, frankly, indistinguishable from ISIS, except more dangerous because they happen to have nuclear weapons and an endless supply of US weapons and money. That, if you want to defend that, by all means, go for it. But nobody should take any of these lies at face value. Go and look at objective sources, what human rights organizations are saying, what Israeli soldiers are admitting to themselves, and what the witnesses who are on the receiving end of these crimes have to testify about what they're enduring.
Okay, we've had both sides of that specific...
If I may interject already, I think, can we get back to Lebanon? Because this is veering off. This is veering off very much.
Yeah, David, I'm just going to get you to pause for a minute. Sarit, I know that you want to respond directly to what Omar has said. You've both said your piece on either sides of that particular genocide debate. Granted, I know that it is a very difficult one. You've both had your say on it. So I'm going to move us back to the topic at hand, just because we need to stay on focus. And I'm I'm going to turn it over to David to speak specifically about Hezbollah disarmament. In the region, does Hezbollah need to hand over its weapons if we are going to relieve the tension that we are clearly seeing from Beirut on the border between Israel and Lebanon?
Thank you for having me on. And yes, let's please stay on topic and not get into discussions and logical fallacies based on arguments from authority. Let's actually make the arguments based on the facts and the law itself. Now, speaking of legality, Lebanon agreed to a November 27th, 2024 ceasefire that requires the disarmament of all militias, the dismantlement of all their infrastructure, starting south of the Litani River. So the question of whether Lebanon should, whether Hezbollah should, this is all moot at this point, because Lebanon, as the sovereign who controls the Lebanese territory from which Hezbollah operates, has agreed to this. If they thought differently, they shouldn't have agreed to it either on November 27th of 2024, with all the stipulations and terms included in that agreement, nor in 2006 with Resolution 1701, which actually was built off of the 7 points of the Senora government. Now, what we have seen since then, right, is that Lebanon is not acting on the terms of the ceasefire. You've mentioned seizure of armaments that have been spent, but Hezbollah itself has not been disarmed. If we look at, and you can shake your head, Alma, but I didn't interrupt you. I sat here silently, so please afford me the same respect.
I'm shaking my head silently. Surely I'm allowed to have a facial expression.
If you go to the Longboard Journal, where I, unlike Alma, track weekly Israeli operations in Lebanon, you'll see that no, not 127 Lebanese civilians have been killed. There have been Lebanese civilians that have been incidentally killed in Israeli operations, but the vast majority have been Hezbollah operatives. According to Hezbollah's admission, Hezbollah's eulogies, Hezbollah has given these people military funerals. You don't give military funerals to civilians. And the fact of the matter is, right, a ceasefire is not a total cessation of armed activities. A ceasefire, and this is me speaking as a lawyer of the laws of armed conflict. Yes, Alma, I actually have a JD in the laws of armed conflict. A ceasefire does not change the situation does not change, and this is where I will explain to you, not from authority, but from legal knowledge. The ceasefire does not change the situation from warfare to a complete existence of peace, right? So this is an in-between. This is what most legal scholars would say, and the terms that dictate what is permissible in that interim phase, that intermediate phase, are the terms of the ceasefire itself. So if, according to most scholars, one side or another commits a serious violation of the ceasefire terms, the opposing party has the right to self-help measures. Now, what is a serious violation in the context of the Lebanon ceasefire? Given that Lebanon has agreed to the obligation to disarm Hezbollah, and given that, according to Hezbollah's own admission, according to Syrian authorities who are seizing weapons and funds destined for Hezbollah in Lebanon, according to the IDF, Hezbollah is rearming. Hezbollah is not being disarmed north and south of the Litani River, according to Naim Qassem. This in and of itself is a serious violation of the ceasefire. Lebanon is not taking action, and that entitles Israel, as a matter of the ceasefire, to take self-help measures to rectify the situation. That is the law, whether we like it or not.
Okay, Omar, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the problem with David, which is unsurprising for somebody who works for an outfit, Orwellingly named Foundation for Defense of Democracies, which is in fact a defense.
IMEU is your organization, Omar.
That they do, and what they actually do is there to do apologetics for that genocidal regime that is behaving like a rogue state. And from his perspective, Lebanon's obligations matter. What Lebanon commits to, they're the sovereign, they have to follow through. But somehow Israel is completely free to not abide by any of its commitments. So it's free to engage in illegal occupation. It's free to hold on to 5 points within Lebanon in violation of the ceasefire, free to bomb Lebanon from top to bottom at will whenever they want to, free to commit to letting a certain amount of aid into Gaza.
That's not at all what I said. And Omar is sitting here, again, for someone who ran IMEU, which is an actual propaganda organization. All he can do is engage in ad hominems. What I said is that
David,
Israel,
just let Omar respond, and then I'll bring it back to you.
To take self-help measures.
Suddenly you can't keep control of yourself.
Measures,
you find yourself compelled to interrupt me, which, by the way, tells you something. He doesn't like what I have to say. He doesn't know how to respond to it logically. And so the only thing he has left is to interrupt me, to keep me from finishing my thoughts, because he wants to prevent the audience from hearing me out. Nonetheless, Israel is in violation of a mountain of UN resolutions. The commitments that Israel has violated is simply endless. And so, again, this idea that Israel can be a country that is above the law and above accountability and can do whatever it wants, but everybody else has to behave within the bounds of the law, is a completely absurd suggestion. And it's only posited by people who are here to do apologetics for that rogue regime that behaves outside of the bounds of the law, as is testified by every, again, single human rights organization in the world, every authority on international law, and that mountain of resolutions and commitments that Israel has made, which the UN is quite open about the fact, and the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court is coming after Israel for war crimes. All of these things are just flying in the face of everything David is saying. To have an Israeli leader who's wanted by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity and war crimes, and to sit here and talk about the obligations of the Lebanese state, it's just completely absurd.
Okay, Sarit.
So again, I'm going to
David,
bring
please
this
let
back to
Sarit
Lebanon.
finish. We're going to let Sarit have a say, and then I'll come to you, David.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
What
Sarit.
you just said, Omar, is back with any details. So let me give you some details. We are focusing on the north. I can have a different discussion with you about elsewhere, but let's focus on the north. And let's give you some details. I will describe a video that we published today in our Twitter account of a funeral of a principal of a school in Lebanon, in South Lebanon actually, that was killed by Israel. Sounds like it's a civilian, but surprisingly enough, during his funeral, the flag was changed from a Lebanese flag to a Hezbollah flag, because this guy is not only the principal of the school, he is also the liaison officer of Hezbollah to the population. What does that mean in reality? This means that he's the guy who is responsible for renting the rooms, apartment, and garages of where the Hezbollah will hide the rockets and dig his tunnels beneath the houses of the Lebanese. This is one thing. Second, as Mr. Daoud said, agreement means that both sides need to implement the agreement. We committed to withdraw completely from Lebanon in 60 days, while Lebanon committed to disarm Hezbollah south to the Litani River, except Lebanon made this commitment 20 years ago, after the war of 2006, which, by the way, was opened by Hezbollah as well, not only the current war. We didn't start this war, neither in Gaza and nor in Lebanon. It was Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Okay, how I know that? Because I live here. And those rockets were fired at my community, and I had to get to the bomb shelter with my kids in 15 seconds. You can smile until tomorrow. Come and live here and experience by yourself.
Yeah,
what
no,
we
it's
have
very
experienced
sympathetic.
here
The country
for
committing
14
genocide,
months.
its citizens
By
are not always feel
Hezbollah.
safe. I'm sure it's really
Let
sad.
me finish, please. Hezbollah is not the official army of the state of Lebanon. Hezbollah is a second militia in the state of Lebanon that is actually damaging the interest of the Lebanese themselves to have one state, one government. While it is refusing to disarm, it is leaving Lebanon as a failed state. It is taking advantage of the resources of the state of Lebanon for the benefit of Iran. And that's the biggest crime. This is a bigger crime than the crimes that were made against Israelis. And I'm sorry that you are not even mentioning that. You are all busy with talking about UN institutions instead of talking about what we are discussing here.
Okay.
UN institutions are not
What we
the
are
topic
discussing.
of the discussion. The discussion is all about Hezbollah. This is what we were invited to discuss now. So
By all
please
means, let's
address
focus on
this
Hezbollah.
topic. And don't
One-
worry about the amount of people who were killed, because I have the names and I have an Excel list of how many people exactly were killed during the ceasefire and before the ceasefire, and the vast majority are Hezbollah military operatives, because
Which is
those
a
killings
drop
were
in the
targeted
bucket
killings
compared to
Okay.
the civilians that Israel has
were
slaughtered in
violating
Lebanon, which is the point.
international
This is
Okay.
an entirely one-sided mindset that is just deeply broken. If we want to talk about Hezbollah, it's a good question to ask how Hezbollah came into being. And you realize that they actually rose up in Lebanon in response to the Israeli occupation of Lebanon, and they succeeded in driving Israel out of Lebanon in the year 2000. That's why they have popular support. And yes, there are many people in the South who are
is a fake
sympathetic to Hezbollah because
Okay,
that
we're not
is-
going to go back in history because how they became who they are is one thing. Just a moment, everyone. How they became who they are is one thing, but we can only start debating what is going to happen now. So let me bring up a social media post for you from US Special Envoy Thomas Barak. He posted this on social media on the 20th of October, because if we are focusing on what will happen now? Not how Hezbollah came to be, but what happens going forward. Thomas Barak says, and this is his critique of the Lebanese government, the Lebanese government's principle of one country, one military remains more aspiration than reality, constrained by Hezbollah's political dominance and the fear of civil unrest. Omar, let me ask you then, can the Lebanese government disarm Hezbollah? Can they fulfill what they agreed and what the government has pledged to do without sparking sectarian violence?
I mean, Tom Barak is correct in this first half about the assessment of what's going on. The why is the problem. There's no question about the fact that Lebanon is a divided country, that you have different militias with weapons, and that is a problem. It could be solved if you did not have a regional bully that Israel says can do whatever they want, behave as above the rules and above the law, and can invade and bomb and occupy. Israeli snipers are taking out children. Israeli bombs are taking out children in Lebanon and in Syria. We've just had these killings happen over the past couple of days.
They're not taking any children.
An Israeli raid
never target
in Syria.
children. This is
There was an Israeli raid.
Can we take this
Syria
back to Lebanon, please? Can we keep this focused on Lebanon? Because that is the focus of this. Any obligations that Lebanon must undertake and what Israel must undertake.
Okay, David, let Omar finish and I'll come to you.
Lebanon. So can we please focus on Lebanon rather than what this has become is just Omar.
Okay, David, you've made your point. Now let Omar finish.
Finish my sentence, please. What David is living in is a fantasy world in which Israeli aggression throughout the region is completely separate from the argument within Lebanon about what should be the response to living next to Israel. If Israel was a law-abiding country that did not behave like a regional bully with endless aggression throughout the region, you could make a very strong argument to why militant groups throughout Lebanon need to disarm and to consolidate power because there isn't an external threat. But as long as Israel behaves the way it does, and as long as the US keeps insisting that Israel can do whatever it wants, can never abide by any commitment, does not need to respect international law, and its crimes are completely above accountability, then I'm sorry, you're not going to have countries in the region feel like they can take on the challenges of consolidating power in the face of
Mr. Omar.
I
have a question.
Just a moment, Sarit. I said I would come to David after this. Sarit, I'll come to you in a minute, but I said to that David that he could respond. David, do you think that Hezbollah, the government, can fulfill this pledge they've made without Lebanon descending into sectarian violence?
No, absolutely not, because the overwhelming majority of Lebanese Shia continues to support Hezbollah for pragmatic and ideological reasons, depending on who you talk to and among that community. The overwhelming majority of Lebanese, however, support Hezbollah's disarmament. This is according to an Arab Barometer poll from September of 2024, where 70% of Lebanese oppose Hezbollah. Not only that, I mean, Omar wants to talk about legality. Let's talk about Lebanese law, where the Taif Agreement actually says that all militias must disarm. This is Section 2 of the Taif Agreement, right? Lebanon's international obligations. This is notwithstanding anything Israel does. This is an empty, what we call tu quoque argument, right? This idea that because one side does something wrong, the other side is entitled to do something wrong. Putting aside what Israel is doing or not doing, Lebanon has obligations, baseline obligations under international law to ensure that its territory is controlled by the sovereign country, by the sovereign authorities of the state. Its own laws require it to disarm all militias. Its subsequent obligations, right? Resolution 1701 in 2006, November 27th, 2024, the ceasefire agreement. Lebanon has undertaken subsequent obligations, reinforcing its baseline obligation under international law to ensure that its territory is free of militia presence, that those militias do not threaten the territorial integrity, sovereignty, or independence or security of neighboring countries. Hezbollah has not just attacked Israel, it's committed massacres in Syria. If we want to keep bringing up Syria, Omar, right, let's talk about what Hezbollah has done there as well. So again, bringing this back to the conversation at hand, whatever the case, Lebanon has undertaken this obligation and it is not fulfilling it under the terms of the ceasefire, because not fulfilling this obligation constitutes a serious violation of the ceasefire's terms, which is to disarm all militias starting south of the Litani River. If Israel sees this as the other party, it is allowed to take self-help measures. That is the law.
Shouldn't Lebanon also feel safe and secure? If the Lebanese people don't feel safe and secure, why should Hezbollah disarm if Israel is breaching the ceasefire too?
maybe I can,
Again, as I'm saying,
maybe
Israel is
maybe I
not
can
breaching the
jump in.
ceasefire. Israel is engaging in self-help measures that are permissible under international law.
Sort of
When the
sounds
other
a bit
party,
semantical, though, isn't it?
but that's the law. That's the law. When you say law, you have to adhere to the terms of the law, right? If we don't like international law, we can debate the efficacy and the correctness and the reasoning, the logic of international law. But this is what international legal scholars will say. Omar, be quiet, please. Okay, you've said nothing of worth. What you've done only is to resort to name calling, to calling out my organization.
Okay, I need you to keep your answers a bit shorter, David. Wrap that up so we can bring Sarit in.
So again, Lebanon has agreed, right, in the November 27, 2024 ceasefire. President Joseph Aoun, in his inaugural speech, has also said, "Hasr silah biyad ad-dawla," right? He will monopolize arms in the hands of the state. This was part of the new cabinet under Nawaf Salam's commitment. And yet, what we've seen since then is Lebanon has undertaken action after action to avoid taking that obligation, including on September 5th, rather than approving the LAF's plan, they ambiguously welcomed it. And now we've moved from disarmament to containment of Hezbollah's weapons in the hope that one day time will make them rust away, rather than actually doing what it undertook in the November 2027 ceasefire and what its officials have promised to undertake in the months since then.
All right, Sarit, do you think you can visualise a time that Hezbollah could be a purely political force? If its military wing was dissolved, could that be something that Israel would be comfortable with where you live on the border?
Okay, I will divide my answer to two. Israel will be comfortable with no threat on the other side of the border. That's very, very clear. If on the other side of the border, our neighbors believe that the state of Israel should be completely extinct, this is unacceptable. Doesn't matter who it is. It's Hezbollah, it's Islamic Jihad, I don't know. I want to add something following what Omar just said, because he describes history in a false way, and I want to set the facts right. Israel didn't pose any threat to the state of Lebanon between 2006 and 2023. You know what? Israel didn't pose any threat to the state of Lebanon since it had withdrawn from Lebanon in May 2000. A withdrawal, by the way, that was recognized by the UN. I'm sorry, I want to speak now. I waited. I will
just ask you to complete the history.
Omar, please let Sarit finish and then I'll come to you. Sarit, go ahead.
Israel had withdrawn completely from Lebanon in May 2000, a withdrawal that was recognized by the UN. Zero threat, and Hezbollah refused to disarm, and then in 2006, abducted 2 of our soldiers from the Israeli side of the border and started a war against Israel. These are the facts. We didn't do anything against Hezbollah in Lebanon in those years between 2006 and 2023, and we allowed the monster to become crazy on my border, just across the Israeli communities. I used to see Hezbollah military operatives over there. We found in 2019 6 border crossing tunnels of Hezbollah, which were excavated in those years. I visited those tunnels. I was there. They were fully equipped, prepared to send the Hezbollah warriors to our communities to massacre us. You didn't even mention that this is a clear violation of UN resolutions, not Israeli law, UN resolutions. As for history, Hezbollah was established as a need of the Shiite population inside Lebanon, the neglected Shiite population inside Lebanon. The first flag of Hezbollah was under the name the Islamic Revolution in Lebanon. Islamic Revolution means the Islamic Revolution of Iran, to be exported in Lebanon and then exported elsewhere as well. That's
okay, Sarit, I'm just going to interrupt you there because we don't really have time to go back into the history. I'm going to turn it over to Omar. Omar, do you think that what Sarit is saying has some valor there, that Hezbollah has itself to blame for the situation Hezbollah and Lebanon now find itself in?
It's a great question. I mean, you have to remember, again, if we're talking about how Israel withdrew in 2000, they withdrew because of Hezbollah. That is the reason why they were forced to leave and end their illegal occupation of Lebanon. So then to turn around and say,
So why
well, see,
Hezbollah
Hezbollah
didn't
has to
disarm?
Again, it's a
Let's
complicated
assume you're
question.
right. Why Hezbollah didn't disarm?
Okay, Sarit, I let you finish, so let's let Omar go.
Yeah. So then there's a debate on whether
Thank
do you
you.
still need the military force that succeeded in ending Israeli occupation of Lebanon. Should they stick around or should they go? Should they intervene when Israel starts committing genocide in Gaza? Was it wise for them to join the fray, or should they have just stayed on the sidelines to safeguard Lebanon? That is a rich and lively Lebanese debate for them to figure out about what the correct strategy is. But again, just to go back to the absurdity of what David was talking about, the idea that Israel continuing to occupy 5 points in Lebanon and continuing to bomb Lebanon relentlessly not being a violation of the ceasefire, it is frankly beyond laughable. I mean, just, I don't know what level of stupidity you expect from the
Cite
audience.
me the
to
law.
listen to that
Cite
kind
me
of
the law,
language.
Omar.
And to take
Cite
it
me law.
seriously
Cite me
in the
legal
face
scholars.
of,
Don't
again,
just sit there
a
and use
universal-
empty
Okay,
terms that are
David,
too
just
big
let
for you to
Omar
comprehend.
finish. Let Omar
Could you be
finish.
quiet while I'm talking and let me finish my thought?
You have nothing
In the
you're
face
saying.
of
You're not saying
every
anything
single-
worthwhile, Omar.
You
every
cannot
single
call a
expert
panel member
on
Let
this issue,
Omar
every legal
finish.
authority, every legal authority on
Name
this,
one.
every single human rights
Name one.
organization, the International
Name
Court of
one.
Justice, the International Criminal
Name
Court,
one.
the UN
David,
Security
please.
Council, the frankly, even the EU. I mean, at this point, there's a consensus about Israel's violations of the ceasefire, and to pretend that this is not happening, you're just expecting a level of stupidity from the audience to go along with this shameless propaganda on behalf of this genocidal apartheid regime. And by all means, keep doing it. It is all you have left. But public opinion is shifting throughout the world, including in the United States, where this propaganda doesn't fly anymore. People see with their bare eyes the atrocities that Israel is committing every day, and they don't buy this crap anymore. And that is the reason why Israel is using the public opinion war, even though they're winning the ground one with the overwhelming military force that the U.S. supplies to them. There is a question about legitimacy.
I think this is enough. You cannot call people stupid.
So this does not, again, this is just a nonsensical ad hominem that does not go to, he's not
Okay.
raised a single legal point. He's not cited a single legal authority. This is a pointless discussion with someone who's coming here to spread propaganda. Again, I've cited the state of international law on how ceasefires
we're not going to get too bogged down into the legalese of it, into the legal law. Okay, Omar, now let's,
but a ceasefire
David,
is
a
a
very
legal
brief
instrument.
response from you, please, David, and then I need to move us on to our next segment, or are we going to run out of time? Very briefly, David, a quick response, and then we'll move it on.
A ceasefire is a legal instrument. It is an instrument of international law. Therefore, the body of conduct, right, the body that governs what each party is entitled to do and what each party is not entitled to do and each party's obligations is international law. And as international law interprets it, it's the terms of a ceasefire. This is basically a contract between two parties, Lebanon and Israel in this case. Lebanon has obligations, Israel has obligations. There are mutual obligations. If one party does not deign to undertake its obligations under that agreement to which it willingly signed, right? Then the other side is entitled to take self-help measures if the other side is not willing to rectify the situation. That is the state of international law. Whatever Omar wants to sit there and use all these terms that he doesn't understand and he couldn't actually interpret, that's fine, but that is the state of international law. It can make him as angry as he wants, it make him as displeased as he wants, because what I can tell is that Omar wants Hezbollah to remain armed. This is his desire.
Okay.
So he's sitting there and engaging in mental gymnastics.
We can disarm Hezbollah. I actually don't.
All right.
Disarm it, but the Lebanese
I'm
want
going
to
to pause
disarm
both of you there, and I'm going to move us on.
Hezbollah is refusing
because
disarmament.
David,
Hezbollah is refusing to submit to the Lebanese government's orders. This isn't even about international law anymore. This is about Lebanese law. Beirut tells Hezbollah, for example, you are not allowed to project Hassan Nasrallah's picture onto Raush, Iraq, and in October, Hezbollah disregards even that. Even when they hold a memorial for Hassan Nasrallah, they project Nasrallah's image onto Raush, Iraq in defiance of Lebanese law, in defiance of the Lebanese government's orders. And what Hezbollah is doing in Lebanon is intimidating the Lebanese government, using its Shiite support to intimidate the Lebanese government to not fulfill its obligations under international law and not fulfill its obligations under its own domestic law, the Taif Agreement and subsequent laws.
Okay, now I'm going to move us on. Sarit, I'm going to come to you very shortly. Sarit, if you can just hold that thought for a minute, okay? I'm going to come to you really shortly because I want to pick up on something that David has said, because you keep referring to the breaches of the ceasefire, and Israel has a right if one party isn't upholding its side of the ceasefire, that it's a self-help measure, whereas the UN peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon itself has recorded more than 10,000 ceasefire and what they've called breaches since the pause was implemented.
wow.
And
Did you
that's
just
coming
cite an
from the UN.
authority?
Thanks,
I might be
Omar.
used
Just a
to
moment, please.
David.
That's coming from the UN, that there has been 10,000 ceasefire breaches. For its part, Israel says that it's justified those strikes, arguing that Hezbollah is regrouping and rearming in the south. But nonetheless, they have been designated as breaches by the UN. The IDF still occupies, as we've been discussing, 5 strategic points in southern Lebanon. So, Sharit, I said I would come to you. I want to put this to you. The Lebanese parliament made a very rare and somewhat controversial announcement that it was willing to hold negotiations with Israel. 2 days later, Tel Aviv struck Beirut and killed, as well as a Hezbollah senior official, civilians. Does that give anyone in the Lebanese government confidence that Israel is willing to negotiate for peace?
We didn't kill civilians in this.
There were no civilians killed in Beirut.
There were 4 Hezbollah operatives in addition to Haitham Tabatabai.
We killed the head.
This is according to Naim Qasim.
Okay, David, let's Sarit finish.
Along with 4 more commanders, senior commanders of Hezbollah, who were with him at this meeting. He was using an apartment in a very dense area in Beirut, and he was busy with rebuilding the military capabilities of Hezbollah against us.
Okay,
and that's why he was.
Be that as it may, 2 days after the Lebanese government said it was going to negotiate, is that a good way to start that discussion?
I would love to answer your question if you allow me.
Go ahead.
Please allow me to answer your question. Israel is not attacking Beirut. Israel is not attacking Lebanon. Israel is attacking Hezbollah in Beirut or Hezbollah in Lebanon or wherever it is. We have no business in fighting with the Lebanese. Actually, on the contrary, I wish, and every Israeli who lives here, wish we will be able to have peace with the Lebanese. We used to have good relationship with the Lebanese in the past. My family origins are from Lebanon. I wish I could go and visit Beirut as a tourist to see my grandmother's home, okay, and the synagogue where they prayed. I wish for peace every day, and I will be on the first bus to Beirut to come over there and to arrange tourist tours between Beirut and northern Israel. Unfortunately, as long as there is Hezbollah that doesn't accept the very existence of the state of Israel and the very existence of me and my family living here in northern Israel, we cannot have peace with this kind of an organization.
Okay,
it's not
but I'll
about
circle you back to the question that I asked,
is
is Israel willing to negotiate for peace? Because that didn't look like a negotiation.
Of course, we are willing to negotiate for peace. Our hand is reached for peace since the state was established. It's in the Statement of Independence that we reach our hand to peace with every neighbor that is willing to talk with us. The Lebanese were not even willing to sign the maritime deal that was signed 3 years ago about marking the maritime border between Israel and Lebanon. They were not even willing to sit with us at the same room and sign the agreement. When I am interviewed with Lebanese that are based in Lebanon, first I'm interviewed, not like this panel. First I'm interviewed, and then they are interviewed, or vice versa. They never put us both at the same time online. Lebanese that are speaking with the Israelis, even over the phone, are risk of being jailed in Lebanon. This is unheard of, and it's not happening in Israel. Israelis would love to negotiate with the Lebanese about peace, but let's start with the very question. Can you make peace while Hezbollah has that much power inside Lebanon?
Okay, all right, let's put that to Omar. Can Lebanon negotiate for peace while Hezbollah pulls the strings?
Yeah, think of just literally the one-sided, just how biased you have to be in framing that issue without actually being able to even consider the other side of this. Can you make peace with Israel as long as this fanatical government is in power of Benjamin Netanyahu? And when she talks about, oh, we're not attacking Lebanon, we're attacking Hezbollah in Lebanon, turn this around for a minute. If Hezbollah started targeting Israeli soldiers in Israeli cities and dropping bombs to assassinate Israeli commanders, would anybody entertain this?
Just let Omar finish. Thank you, Sarit.
So it is an entire.
Yes, I will let him if he will tell.
In which Israel can do whatever it wants, but everybody else has to be as peaceful and withdrawn as possible. And frankly, to put it to the words that David attempted to put in my mouth earlier, in, again, desperation, accusing me of wanting to keep Hezbollah armed, I frankly could not possibly be happier if Hezbollah had disarmed and everything in Lebanon was as peaceful and quiet as possible. The question is, how do you get there? And the way you get there is by stop having a carte blanche for the regional bully to behave however it wants. And this idea that, as you noted, the UN is saying that Israel has violated the ceasefire nearly 10,000 times in Lebanon. And so if that's not a good enough authority for David, and his definition is Israel bombing Lebanon is actually not a violation of the ceasefire, and it's still on the Lebanese government to abide by that ceasefire and then look for a way to have peace. Peace with whom exactly? As long as Israel is behaving like a rogue regional state, there's not going to be peace in that region. That's the fundamental problem. Israel wants to have it both ways. On the one hand, they want to be able to stop Palestinians out of existence, occupy them, deny them their basic rights, and bomb anybody in the region that dares to object or stand in solidarity with Palestinians. And the only way to have peace with Israel is to submit to Israeli dominance and power and to say Israel can do whatever it wants. If you want that kind of arrangement, by all means, you can have so-called peace, but peace that is not based on justice is not going to represent the peoples of the region and is bound to lead to an explosion sooner or later. The only way to deal with this is for Israel to understand that other people in the region, the Palestinians, the Syrians, the Lebanese, are equal to Israelis. And if Israel has the right to self-defense and freedom and opportunity and whatever they want to, then everybody else in that region should have the same rights as well. But Israel doesn't want to have it that way. They want to keep the boot of occupation on the necks of Palestinians, on the necks of the Syrians in the Golan Heights and now beyond, and on the points in South Lebanon that they insist on holding, but everybody else has to be peaceful and withdrawn and abide by whatever Israel dictates to them. Pursue that if you want to. It is not going to lead to peace.
All right.
Okay.
So
these are so many lies at the same time. Because
really briefly, Sarit, because I'm going to hand it over to David. Very briefly, please. Keep it briefly, Sarit, so I can hand it over to David.
I am saying that these were so many lies at the same conversation that truly I don't know where to begin. Israel is not posing any threat to Lebanon for so many years until Hezbollah started the war against us. Hezbollah was preparing for this war for so many years.
Okay, you made that point earlier, Sarit, so I'm going to hand it over to David because you've already made that point and we're running out of time. So, David, I'm going to hand it over to you so as to not repeat and backtrack on territory we've covered. David, do you think that Israel is acting with impunity, that the current government is preventing a dialogue because of their actions? Do they have something to answer for here too?
I'm going to speak again. I'm going to keep this confined to Lebanon. I'm going to go to your claim about the UN UNIFIL's cataloging of technical breaches. Now, technical breaches are not necessarily illegal. Again, the UN is not sitting there trying to take sides or justify an action or another. They're sitting there and cataloging if something happens. Now, again, this is where international law comes in to see whether that action has a justification. Any use of force, right? Use of force in international law is neutral. Technically, it could be an aggression. Technically, it could be self-defense. It depends on the context and the facts. So this is how I would classify the UN's cataloging of these breaches of the ceasefire. As for the Lebanese government and its offer of peace, it didn't exactly do that. What the Lebanese government has consistently said is we're willing to negotiate on the precondition that Israel first ceases its military operations in Lebanon and withdraws from Lebanon. At the same time, it is not unwilling to undertake any action against Hezbollah. We've heard consistently from President Joseph Aoun, from Nawaf Salam, from Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, from Tom Barrack, who's as close to anything as a confessor that Lebanon has, that the Lebanese will not undertake any forcible disarmament of Hezbollah. So if you're asking Israel to withdraw now, and then you take the matter of Hezbollah back to what the Lebanese have said is dialogue and consensus, what this will mean is that you're going to ask Hezbollah really, really nicely, will you disarm? And Hezbollah has said no, right? Not just north of the Litani River, south of the Litani River. And no, 4 civilians were not killed alongside Haytham Tabatabai, according to Naim Qasim, who sat there on November 3rd, last Saturday, 3 days ago, detailing the 4 people who were killed alongside Haytham Tabatabai. And this is Naim Qasim, the head Secretary General of Hezbollah, detailing their organizational status in Hezbollah.
More than 20 other civilians were also wounded.
So,
anyway,
and But so
Okay,
again,
let's get back
if
to
we want to get into
negotiations.
the
Is that a
specifics of
platform for
international law,
negotiating?
if we want to get into the specifics, but they weren't killed. You alleged earlier that they were killed. No civilians were killed.
Okay,
28 people of undisclosed
127 were killed.
identity were wounded, and that is unfortunate collateral of warfare. That does not make the strike itself illegal, right? We have to balance the distinction, military necessity, and proportionality. This is how every operation must be assessed under international law, under LOAC.
All right, we're almost running out of time, so I'm going to move us on. I'm going to make sure that we all keep our answers short because we are really up against it now. Sarit, I said I would come to you. I want you to respond, but also I want you to comment on what the US Special Envoy Thomas Barak recently argued, that the only way to neutralise Hezbollah's power is if Lebanon signs a normalisation or diplomatic accord with Israel. Do you think that's correct?
I think that's a part of the idea. It's correct, but again, if this would mean that we will sign an agreement, peace doesn't mean an agreement. Peace means peace, okay? If we will sign a peace agreement, and on the other side of the border, there wouldn't be an armed terrorist organization that has an aspiration to eliminate the state of Israel, that is building tunnels and military infrastructures against us, this is not peace. If it's peace and it means that there is no Hezbollah in South Lebanon, of course it's peace, it is welcome, I would love that. Now I want to comment on what was said here. During the war, Hezbollah claimed responsibility to shooting rockets towards Israel. About half of those claiming responsibility were to the Israeli communities in the Galilee where I live. Some of them were too specific where I live and landed over here where I live and sent me to the bomb shelter in 15 seconds, which is not happening. So the one who is targeting civilians deliberately is Hezbollah, and saying that clearly in Arabic.
Okay, I have a question for you on that though, Sarit. Because the UN peacekeeping patrols have also been targeted by Israel. They say it was accidental or misinformation, but on numerous occasions, UN peacekeepers, UNIFIL, have been hit by Lebanese, by Israeli. They have indeed. So is that just a mistake? Is Lebanon's military not as precise as perhaps they like the world to believe? If they're accidentally hitting, and this is from the UN, this is not my interpretation. The UN is saying that. So does Israel have a role to play in the disintegration of the situation here?
I want to explain what happened here with the UN during the war, because you asked. The UN was asked by Israel to evacuate its positions in the areas that we maneuvered. Again, we maneuvered to defend ourselves only after 9 months that we had daily attacks by Hezbollah, okay? The UN refused to evacuate from those areas. We never targeted the UN deliberately, but war is the kingdom of uncertainty. It's a chaotic situation, and when a UN truck without any coordination is entering into a battlefield, when IDF is shooting Hezbollah and vice versa, it may get hurt. And yet, do you know how many UN soldiers were killed by Israel in the current war? 0. None. We never targeted the UN. In the IDF maps, the UN appears as sensitive assets that you should avoid from targeting.
Okay.
We never target UN. We want to take care of the safetyness of the UN. Now, to go back to all those years.
Sarit, I need to interrupt you there because we're running out of time and I need to give Omar a chance to respond. I apologise, but we are really up against the time here. Omar, you have a right of reply there.
Said a lot of things
real quick.
There's
a question of credibility here.
UN organizations, and I want to talk about them.
Okay, we can come back to that. Let me bring Omar back in because, you know, we're covering a bit of old territory here. Omar, go ahead.
There is a question of credibility here. When you look at what has been proven in Gaza, meaning doctors, Western doctors, including Jewish doctors, saying that Israeli snipers...
Omar, I need you to focus on Lebanon and Hezbollah. We can't be focusing on Gaza because we do not have the time. Omar, if you have something to say about Hezbollah and Lebanon, go ahead.
Israel has a proven track record of targeting medics, UN workers, children, anybody who's coordinating with the Israeli military about their location. The ambulance that was going to pick up Hind Rajab in Gaza, the Palestinian 6-year-old girl, was coordinating with the Israeli military and was targeted and bombed anyway. So when you come along
Talking
and say
about
Israel does
Gaza, you're
target
not
civilians,
stopping him.
that flies in the face of overwhelming evidence
Sarit, let
that is
Omar finish,
documented by
please.
everybody, every entity that has investigated Israel's conduct, including the United Nations and a slew of human rights organizations, including Israeli human rights organizations, concluded that Israel deliberately targets civilians. So again, if somebody's going to come and lie to you and tell you that the most aggressive rogue regional government that has a proven track record of attacking civilians suddenly does not attack civilians, again, you can believe the propagandist on behalf of that government, or you can look at the objective record documented by people whose job it is to provide objective analysis of these situations and see that they absolutely have targeted civilians and continue to do so.
Okay.
I'm sorry. This panel is not professional.
If I may
You are
interject
letting
on
him
this
talk
point, because I
about
think I
Gaza.
actually have something
Rather you
substantive
talk
to add.
about Lebanon.
David,
This
David,
is like,
go
I
ahead.
don't know what's
Sarit,
happening here.
we'll let
You
David
don't
go.
even let me finish talking about Lebanon.
Very, very briefly. We have mere moments. Very briefly, so I can bring David back in
Okay.
for a final comment.
We are talking about Lebanon. We can have a separate discussion about Gaza. Israel is not targeting civilians. The UN failed for 20 years in reporting the military deployment of Hezbollah in South Lebanon, not even reporting, okay? And that's why we are now in the current situation.
We only target civilians in Palestine, but not Lebanon. Might not be the best defense, but you do you.
This is not what I've said. Don't put words in my mouth.
I'm saying it's documented very thoroughly in the Palestinian territories, but sure.
Okay, but that's not
I'm sorry,
Sarit's
that
point.
this
That's
is
not
enough
what
for-
Sarit
thank
said
you very
there,
much.
Omar. So, David, because we're almost out of time, final thoughts on Hezbollah, Lebanon, the current state of negotiations. Is there, I mean, if our panel can't agree, how can we get to a negotiated peace?
Well, again, let me just comment on the friction with the United Nations. There was an incident, again, I document all this stuff on a Long War Journal tracker that I put out weekly. The latest issue was put out this week, and I try to cover all sides, all claims. There was an incident with the United Nations where Israeli forces had directed gunfire towards a UN patrol, not knowing. The UN reached out to the IDF, and the IDF ceased fire, right? So if the IDF were intentionally targeting the United Nations, once they were informed that there was a UN patrol that was being targeted, they would have continued targeting rather than ceasing fire. Now, look, yes, this panel can't agree because what we're bringing here is perhaps a degree of subjectivity and subjective opinion. This is why I keep resorting to international law. This is as objective a metric as we have. It delineates the obligations of all parties. In this case, yes, Israel should withdraw, should cease operations in Lebanon, conditional upon, and this is what the ceasefire terms require, conditional upon Lebanon's disarmament of Hezbollah, not even full disarmament, but beginning to undertake a genuine process of disarmament, which we have not seen yet. And again, this is in compliance with Lebanon's obligations under international law. This is in compliance with Lebanese law. And at that point, if Israel continues with its military activities, then Lebanon has something to say, look, Israel is in violation of international law. We've done our obligations. We've done our duties. What Lebanon has done so far is to engage in rhetoric, nothing on the ground but theatrics, and to claim that they have fulfilled their obligations while Israel has not.
We've lost connection with Sarit, so I'm just going to give you a very brief final word there, Omar. Should the government be doing more to prove that it, in good faith, wants to continue on these negotiations? It wants to move further down the path. Should the government be doing more?
The government has to be given the opportunity to do more. And the way that they do more is by applying one standard to everybody in the region. As long as, again, this is really the fundamental problem and seems to be the point that nobody can address. As long as you say that Israel is a country that is above the rules and above the law and can do whatever it wants, can be in violation of a mountain of UN resolutions, can have its leaders wanted by the International Criminal Court, can violate orders and advisory opinions of the International Court of Justice, and can carry out violence wherever it wants to, and then to turn around and say the Lebanese government has obligations to behave a certain way, it's laughable on its face. You're only going to end this problem by treating everybody, by making sure that everybody who has obligations can meet them. And until Israel understands that it is not a country that is above the rules and above the law, and it has responsibilities too, to make sure that the region is safe from its bullying and its unlawful behavior, and primarily Palestinians have an opportunity to be a free people. That is the path towards peace and stability. And that is how you empower the Lebanese government to take meaningful action to restore its sovereignty throughout all of this territory.
Okay, it is a very difficult topic, and I appreciate everyone's diverse views. Particularly, let me thank Sarit Zahavi, whose connection we lost, and unfortunately, because we've run out of time, we don't have time to reconnect with her, but we thank her for her thoughts. Former IDF member and president of the Independent Research Centre, Alma. David Daoud, thank you for being with us, sir. Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies, and Omar Badar, the Middle East analyst based in Washington, D.C. We appreciate everything you've brought to Counterpoints. Thanks for being here. And thank you for tuning in to this debate. It was a very intense one. You can keep up to date with all of our latest debates and interviews by subscribing to Al Arabiya English on YouTube so you don't miss any more debates like that one. You can also follow us on X and TikTok. We'll see you next time.